Task Force 69 was all but dead. The last remnants mercilessly hunted down and eliminated by an endless horde of Ron Jeremys, led by the Alpha. Task Force 420, though valiant in their efforts, were light years away.
Come on! Sir, if you continue at this speed, you'll fly the ship apart! Fly her apart!
Impossibly, one Garand, trapped in time by the Nameless One, pushed through the barrier. The pain, horror, and sadness overwhelmed him as he lived 1,000 lifetimes in seconds. He stood, armed with an Austrian death machine, the only man capable of ending this once and for all. The Austrian weapon smoked from battle and delivered its final judgment, ending Ron Jeremy. But something was terribly wrong in this backwards universe.
How has he been released from his imprisonment?
I'm free.
No, God, not like this.
If you've ever used the AUG in Counter-Strike, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Guys, like and comment. The comment section is actually out of control. YouTube has asked me to calm you guys down. Not possible. We'll see if I get removed because of it. Totally worth it, by the way. Guys, the biggest sponsor of this channel is Brownells. Brownells are huge 2A advocates, and they have an awesome 2A website. Go check them out. Link in the description right below. We can't thank them enough. And of course, the sponsor for this video is Warpath. Now, before you guys click forward, I know we have E3s and E4s. I see you guys in the rail yard all the time playing mobile games. Why not give a mobile game that's sponsoring this video a little bit of love? So we have Warpath. Warpath is a free-to-play mobile strategy game that's both real-time and incorporates a lot of the battles from World War II. So let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit. So the best part about Warpath is that they just recently released an update, including the Air Force, which is important that we are recognized for our ice cream and bouncy house skills. A big thank you to them on that. And of course, it's cool. You get to have fun, play with your friends, have a good time. And here's the thing, free to play, includes some sick guns. Jean-Claude Van Damme is in it. So why the hell? Just play, go download. The link is right below. And of course, the best part is you can form alliances. So whether you only stick to playing with your army buddies or you make bloody blood deals with local Marines, you can have good fun doing that and playing with your friends. And as always, the superior strategy will win. And we can't thank them enough for sponsoring this particular video. Ladies, gentlemen, am I often forgotten, but most certainly not by me, AH1 Zulus. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about a very cool rifle. We have the Steyr AUG, otherwise to all the real ones out there, known as the AUG. I have been waiting to do a review on this guy for a long time, and we've taken a lot of time in doing the review on it, for good reason. Now, before we get into the review, it's going to be important that we go through our full disclosures, because it's important that you know what a reviewer's relationship is with the company. I think that's very important. So, with Steyr, this rifle was sent to me for review, along with 3,000 rounds of ammunition. We ended up doing about 5,000 rounds of ammunition on it, so the extra 2K were from personal stores. This is pretty typical of reviews where ammunition is provided, and it in no way affects what I think is my pretty impartial reviewing skills. So, good, bad, ugly, we'll go through everything of what I think of the AUG, as well as talking a little bit about some of the history behind it, because obviously with these weapons that have seen so much military service, there's a lot to be said. Now, I also want to give credit where credit is due. I've had the very fortunate experience of being able to talk with quite a few service members who have been able to use the AUG in service, both in combat and in civil use, and anything from Austrians to Australians to New Zealanders, and I've been very thankful for their information on their experience with the AUG, and it was definitely factored into this particular review. So a big thank you to them and to those guys out there. They definitely kick ass. Now, the AUG is a really, really interesting weapon because it falls into a category of a very well-proven firearm. Since about the late 70s and early 80s, we've had this firearm that has been used continuously in military service, both within Austria itself, within Australia, and it's seen a whole lot of action, not just from them, but from other special operations groups all around the world. So when we do a review of a weapon like this, it should be noted that these weapons are known already for being very reliable and very durable weapons. In fact, we'll speak a lot to that as we go through it. Now, perhaps what's not noted as much is how are the ergonomics, how is it shooting it, what is it like, because obviously this is a weapon that can survive the military. The question is, for the private consumer out there, does that matter compared to all of the great options that you have out there? Is it really something that you want to get your hands on? So I've definitely spent a lot of time taking my time shooting this. I've taken it to a couple shooting courses and really tried to give it the due diligence, because I will be honest and say that being an American, obviously a little bit biased against bullpups. So I try to be as open-minded as possible when I'm coming in to reviewing a bullpup type rifle, and I think I did a pretty good job of it. In any case, just kind of want to give that little preface there, and without further ado, I think it's about time we give the AUG the limelight. Now, if you're not familiar with the AUG is very interesting. It is a 5.56 by 45 caliber, what would typically be an assault rifle if it was select fire. Unfortunately, due to the ATF and other stupid fucking laws, we have a semi-automatic version only. It is a short stroke gas piston operated weapon, and it is, of course, a bullpup, where the trigger is in front of the action itself. So there are, of course, good things and bad things that come along with having a bullpup type weapon. The best part about having a bullpup type weapon is recognizing how long the barrel is, because a lot of people look at these weapons and they're, especially if you're new to firearms, you might not understand what you're looking at. The barrel on the AUG is actually very, very long. So if we take a look at it right here, I have to unplug my light right here. So that barrel is quite long. In fact, this barrel is 16 inches in a very, very small package. So it's something that is very cool about the AUG and about bullpups in general, which is that you have a very small package, no pun intended, and you have a rifle that has all the ballistic advantages that come with having a 16-inch barrel in a package that is actually about the size of a Mark 18. Now, the first time I heard that, I didn't believe it, because Mark 18 seemed very small. However, and we'll even do the Mark 18 as service, and we'll collapse the stock all the way down. The Mark 18 is just slightly shorter when the Mark 18 is collapsed all the way in, but they are remarkably similar in size. And actually, the typical way I run my Mark 18 is by putting it one click out on the stock, just past the divot right there. And in that case, the Mark 18 is actually slightly longer than the AUG. Pretty incredible, especially when you consider that the Mark 18 is a 10.3-inch barrel and is on the bleeding edge of both reliability and lethality when it comes to the 5.56. We immediately compare that with the AUG, where we have a 16-inch barrel, so we have both better reliability due to a better dwell time, as well as much better lethality when it comes to the 5.56 cartridge, which needs velocity to be the very best it can. And there are other things to consider as well. Because the weapon is so short, it's of course easy to maneuver, it's easy to run with, especially working around barricades and things like that. It's easy to short stroke the thing if you really need to and move to different ports. It is a very maneuverable weapon. It's very easy to run with. It's very easy to tuck this in, especially if you've played football, something like that. It's very similar to getting that ball in there, tucking it in and just fucking hauling ass. This is a very cool, very maneuverable weapon. Not to mention, with the longer barrel compared to any other shorter barrels that are about the same length of it, we get a whole lot less muzzle flash because we have more time for that powder to burn and get those good ballistics. So we have a lot of good things going on. Now, there of course are problems. The trigger, because it is so far from where that sear is released, you run into some issues, and we'll talk about that. As well, there are problems with length of pull. With the stock, I can't, of course, adjust it. Now, there are certain bullpups that have solved this problem, but in general, the length of that stock is what I got. So if it doesn't fit you, well, you're kind of screwed. Of course, with AR-15s and many, more conventional rifles, you can, of course, adjust that stock depending on what's going on, what you're wearing, body armor, all that good stuff, which can be nice. But if the AUG fits you and it fits you and you're wearing your armor or your kit, well, then you're in a good place. Now, for me, I'm 6 foot, about 190 pounds, and this thing fits me very well. So for me, the AUG is just the absolute perfect right size. So that is something that we can say that works out for me very well. So the stock adjustments don't matter quite as much to me. So with those things being said, let's get into it. Let's do what the Navy loves. And let's go tip to butt. Marines getting excited out there too. We have a very A2-like muzzle device. Those can of course be swapped out. No problem. We have a locking collar at the back there to push into it, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Great design, used on many other rifles. And yeah, no problems with the muzzle device. Of course, it is closed on the bottom to ensure that when you're prone and firing, that you're not going to be kicking up dust. And it works absolutely fine as far as keeping the rifle on track. Now, what's really cool, I think, is the barrel. The barrel on the Steyr AUG is cold hammer forged, and that's much what you see with many different military type rifles. And cold hammer forging is great because especially under sustained rates of fire, such as automatic fire, they have a very, very long barrel life. So there's a lot to be said about the longevity of the Steyr AUG, and the barrel is just one of the many components that comes into play of making this a weapon that is somewhat legendary as far as its durability and reliability are concerned. Now from there, we have to talk a little bit about the gas system because I think this is a pretty interesting facet of the Steyr AUG. Now, the Steyr AUG is a short stroke gas piston system, and you have that very much so short stroke gas piston recoil impulse. And in fact, compared to many conventional weapons such as the HK416 or the ARX160 or the G36, the Steyr AUG is actually kind of snappy for a 5.56 caliber weapon, which surprised me given the long barrel length and just kind of how everything feels pretty good. And I think it's a combination of several things. I think the weapon is overgassed, of course, like many other military weapons, to ensure that it can power through that dust and that grime. And notwithstanding certain mud tests that you've seen online from a couple different YouTubers, most military trials have shown the AUG to be either on par or much better than many other weapons out there as far as reliability is concerned in adverse conditions. The Australian military trials come to mind especially. They did a lot of very in-depth studies of it. Beyond that, I think it's due to the short length of pull overall. The weapon isn't adjustable, and I think of something like a Mark 18. Because a Mark 18 collapsed all the way is at about the same length of pull as what you're getting from an AUG. So when I hold a Mark 18, especially with the stock collapsed all the way in, one way to really mitigate recoil on a weapon is that when you have the stock out, you're able to use your bone structure to kind of lock that weapon into your body to ensure that it's not going to be able to move. So when you fire, there's nowhere really for the weapon to go because everything on your body is kind of locked out. It also makes it very comfortable to hold. Now you compare that with the AUG, and because the AUG is so short, kind of like that Mark 18, you're not really locked out on anything. Now, it is of course very comfortable to carry this thing over long periods of time, especially when it comes to CQB. That was something that I really enjoyed about the AUG, was how easy it is to hold this weapon up over extended periods of time, because the weight distribution on this weapon is so far back. It's just really easy to hold up. But at the same time, because I don't have any structures kind of locking this out, when I fire it, there's just a little bit more movement. So it's kind of a combination of that short stroke gas piston, along with the fact that you can't really lock that weapon out like you can on more conventional weapons. And perhaps the weapon is of course overgassed as well, leading to that snappier recoil than what you typically expect from a 5.56 caliber rifle. Beyond that, a really important note in my mind is also, of course, going to be the bolt carry group. So if we go ahead and we break this down one more time so I can kind of show you what's going on. So obviously, this is a very easy weapon to take apart. All right, so yeah, that's the weapon apart. You can also take out the trigger pack group, but in any case, the weapon, this one has been shot approximately 5,000-ish rounds. It's pretty clean. And one thing that should be noted is that it's a very interesting design, and beyond there is how much longevity you get from these bolts and these bolt carrier groups. On the Steyr AUG, these weapons have been known to go 2 to 3 times the amount that you'll see from an AR-15 as far as round counts from the bolt and bolt carrier group alone. There are just certain weapons that end up being incredibly reliable. Weapons like the M4 family of rifles, the AK family of rifles, the Glock 18, the PKM, and the Steyr AUG. These are just weapons that, for whatever reason, due to their design and just how well everything works together, they tend to work for a very long period of time. So a lot has to be said about the longevity you get with the Steyr AUG. It is just a superbly durable weapon as far as lasting throughout time. And so that kind of brings me to the end about talking about the reliability and durability. But essentially, with that long life bolt carrier group, cold hammer forged barrel, and a well-gassed system that is, of course, combat gassed, you just have a good, very reliable system. Now, there are a lot of quirks that come along with the Steyr AUG, and we're about to talk about those right now. So, first off, when it comes to this forward grip right here, this forward grip does fold. So to fold it, you pull down and you push it forward and it can stow. Whether you want to shoot the rifle like that or what have you, most people end up running that thing down. Now these, of course, can be replaced with lower rails from Corvus Defensio, but for most people, they're probably going to be running the standard grip right here. The problem with running one of these types of grips is that when you're shooting hard, moving between barricades, it's very easy to pull down on the gun too much when you're trying to control recoil and kind of unlock that grip where it starts wobbling on you. It's quite annoying. So I haven't been a huge fan of the grip for that very reason. I would definitely, if you're going to be shooting this a lot, and some of the Austrian soldiers have told me the same thing, is getting that thing replaced or taping it down or making sure that that thing can't move. So that's kind of my first gripe when it comes to the Steyr AUG. Now, a lot of people have noted that on the AUG, there's not really a whole lot you can do as far as mounting night vision and that type of stuff and lights. So this is, of course, a new rail from Steyr that's on the side that's much longer than what you typically see, and these will be released quite soon. And I think this makes it a very compelling platform. It allows me to add both a light, and then on the top rail, I have the B.E. Myers maul, which is absolutely perfect because the buttons are right there, so I need to reach for them. All I do is I back my grip off under night vision, and I'm able to get good grip on that maul and take the shots that I need to under night vision or use that device as needed. Now the tape switch for my light, of course, comes down to this forward grip. So when I'm typically shooting, I'm not engaging it, and if I need to use a light, I can simply squeeze down on the pressure pad in order to turn that light on. Which brings us to a couple things. So we have a QD mount right here for a sling. A sling on an AUG has always kind of been a problem. I like the QD point right here. It's worked quite well for me. Now, right here we have a Corvus Defensio extended charging handle. I do like it quite a bit. It allows me to manipulate the rifle pretty easily. Not that there's anything especially wrong with the charging handle, but I like the feeling of the, all metal, very solid Corvus charging handle that we have right there. Now the AUG is kind of interesting. Now it is a non-reciprocating charging handle, but if you need to clear malfunctions, you can of course do it. Being on the left side, perfect, great design. Now, you can also kind of lock it up very much like an MP5. So if you pull it back and you push it up, that will lock the bolt back, whether you need to clear malfunctions or do whatever. And then technically, if you really want and there's a round in there, you could actually MP5 slap that bitch and load a round into there, even though that's not specifically the way you're supposed to do it, but it is a way of doing it. Now, the optics rail on the top right here is awesome, and it is extended. We have a Elcan Spectre on there, and this is probably the only gun that the Elcan Spectre looks good on. But especially on this weapon, the Elcan Spectre just really works. And so will any other optic, but I can just appreciate how good it all looks together. And I haven't had any shift in zero or anything like that in all the time I've been using the AUG. Now this brings us over to the safety. The safety is pretty interesting, and I like it quite a bit. So to go from fire to safe, all you're going to do is push this in right here. Now you're on fire, and to go to safe, you push it in. So when you're ready to fire, all you're gonna do is push in with your hand, and then you're good to go, and you can fire your weapon at that point. So again, you just push in with your finger, and then you're in. It's a pretty quick movement. Different from the AR-15, but I think just as good as far as a manual of arms is concerned. And that brings us down to our space grip on the Steyr AUG. What a bizarre grip, very comfortable, I will say. And it brings us to probably the worst part of the Steyr AUG. So the trigger on a bullpup has been said to be pretty bad. So as far as ranking triggers, we would say like the best trigger being some type of very nice custom 1911 or Korth revolver or something like that, to good triggers like good AK triggers and good AR-15 triggers like the Geisley SSAE, going down to kind of getting bad like Glock, and then going even worse to like a Glock New York trigger, going even worse like a G36 trigger. I do believe that the AUG is perhaps one of the worst triggers that is out there. There are worse, like the GLX 160, the grenade launcher for the Beretta 160 is probably a little bit worse, but this trigger is pretty bad. And to be clear, we do have an updated trigger pack from Steyr on a possible upgrade that they're looking at, and even then, the trigger just really isn't that great. So understand that we are using the upgraded trigger from Steyr, and even still, there's a lot left to be desired when it comes to it. So for, I believe, the third time on Grand Thumb, we're gonna go ahead and ghost a bullpup trigger together. So feeling that trigger right there, we have a lot of pressure to release it and just a whole lot of mush, and then we have our let off. Coming forward, a lot, there we go. There's our reset. So trigger pound with this, trigger pull with this updated trigger, it's around 5 to 6 pounds or so. It's just a mushy trigger, and what's weird about it is it looks light, but it doesn't like push evenly to the rear. It kind of like shimmies back and forth, and it's plastic on plastic when it's coming forward. And most interestingly, the trigger pack, if you can take a look right here, go ahead and pull that trigger pack out. So the trigger pack is actually all plastic, as you can see right here. It is an all plastic design, and so that kind of explains why when you're pulling the trigger, you can just really feel all of those plastic parts really flexing against each other. Now, the actual automatic trigger from the AUG is really interesting, where a half pull will get you semi-auto, and then a full pull will get you that full auto. It's a very interesting design, but on a semi-automatic single shot weapon, it just leaves a lot to be desired because it's a very odd feeling trigger. And you know, the question is like, do I harp on triggers too much? And honestly, I probably do. I'm a little bit obsessed with triggers. I think that a good trigger can absolutely make the difference between good shots and bad shots. And so understand it's my bias, but I do think that the thing that really holds the AUG back as a weapon overall is how terrible the trigger is on this particular weapon. It's slow to shoot, whatever, it's a military weapon, right? How fast do you really need to shoot? Honestly, as fast as I can, but your splits are gonna be slower, and then as we get further out to distance, as we keep walking targets out, having to press kind of that uneven trigger pull, it's just not great. You can, of course, learn it, but understand if you're gonna be getting an AUG because you appreciate all of the things that you get with the AUG, such as reliability, durability, the compact size and all that, understand that the trade-off is of course gonna come down to how terrible that trigger pull is compared to most modern weapons out there. Now, enough harping on the trigger. One thing that I can say that is really cool about the AUG are the magazines and the manual arms here. So when you are going to be performing a reload on the AUG, what's really cool about it is the fact that we have a magazine release right here that is from Corvus Defensio. So go to bolt lock, of course, trigger handle is non-reciprocating. All you're going to do is reach back, hit your magazine release, old mag out, new mag in. As soon as that new mag is in, you can drop that bolt no problem. Now, if you didn't notice, it's very, very easy to reload this weapon in your shoulder compared to an AR-15 where most people end up breaking the weapon down when they reload and doing it from under the shoulder to give them leverage and that type of stuff. With the AUG, it absolutely is not necessary. You can 100% do everything off the shoulder because of how good the balance on the weapon is. So this is something that I can say about how easy it is to perform a magazine change on the Steyr AUG. Now, a couple things on the magazines. So of course we have the original Steyr AUG magazines. You can see one right here that is loaded to a full 30. So they are translucent, you can see the rounds. I do definitely find it easy with my stupid strength, my retard strength, to load above 30 to 31 or 32 rounds, at which point, when you load it in, it has a tendency to shock a round up into the chamber. I don't think that's specifically a problem with the AUG, as it is a problem with me just being a very unintelligent individual. Now, that being said, besides the Steyr magazines, we of course do have Magpul AUG magazines, which I love. Not to mention that I think that they look pretty bitchin' in the gun itself. Any of these magazines are incredibly reliable. They're noted to just work very well. You can of course get the 42 rounders, which are made for the LMG version of the Steyr AUG, and there's a lot of options when it comes to that. The final few things I will note about the Steyr AUG is we have a shell deflector from Corvus Defensio right there, which is a good upgrade in my opinion. Of course, we have the rear stock pin right here, which can of course be reversed as necessary. So where does that bring us with the Steyr AUG? You know, when the Steyr AUG came out in the 80s, we had a really cool design. I think that there's some modernization that's needed. And to be clear, the Australian Army has done a lot of modernization on the AUG and has a really awesome weapon that I'd love to review at some point. But I think the AUG, as we have it from Steyr, does leave a little bit to be desired. Because as durable, reliable, and as good as everything is on the AUG, there are two problems that really play a huge role. That's going to be the snappy recoil and the trigger. Combine those two together and you have a weapon that's actually a little bit difficult as far as getting follow-up shots, especially when you're shooting at distance. So with a service rifle of any type, I believe that's going to be fairly important. And it's certainly a little bit more difficult with the AUG. And that's not to call the AUG a bad weapon, because there are trade-offs with everything. So when it comes to the Steyr AUG, I have to say that everything is a trade-off, right? You have that extremely short weapon, awesome ballistics, wonderful reliability and durability, but of course you have a fairly bad trigger and a kind of snappier recoil. So those are my overall thoughts on the AUG. If you have an AUG already, you have an incredibly wonderful weapon. If you're looking to get one, it is a wonderful weapon. I definitely recommend getting your hands on one, shooting one, and then if you have one, continue to train with it, because honestly, like, you could have the Gucciest gun, but if you're not training with it, you're still gonna die. So I would 100% take a guy with the AUG who trains every day over a guy with like a Geisley AR-15 who trains once a year or something like that. The point is, what's gonna really matter is the training. Is this weapon going to fire when you pull the trigger every fucking time? And that's one thing that you can't say about every weapon. So I do have every confidence in the AUG being a completely serviceable weapon for bad situations. You can't hate on it. You gotta love it. Steyr does do great things. I'm looking forward to further modernizations of this particular weapon. Can't wait to see what they have to come. Ladies and gentlemen, get training. Training is gonna make you awesome with any weapon. Get training from a variety of people. Haley Strategic, Cogworks, Bear Solutions, Core Vision, Pat McNamara. Get training, get better. You are the weapon. Make sure that you sharpen that weapon. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I've got nothing else for you. For real. Final thing for you guys. If you don't have anything nice to say, maybe word it in a way that's a little bit nicer. Constructive criticism goes a long way. Learn how to give it. Learn how to take it. Be better human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. A big shout out to my Patreon people. I've got nothing else for you.